Time to talk brackets. We have a full bracket breakdown coming up for you. Eric, who has been here on the That's What G Said podcast show every single week over the last few years, talking NFL, college football, NBA. Now it's time to dive into the bracket. Eric, a lot of fun as we get set for this week coming up. You and I are recording this on Tuesday night, so we've already had 2 of the play-in games Tuesday night. There'll be 2 more Wednesday night, then 16 games Thursday, 16 games on Friday as we get set for a couple of the best days in all of sports. This is a conversation you and I are going to have on a few different shows. On my show, we'll talk about it on the BTV show. You just recorded one of your podcasts, so lots of March Madness on your brain this week.
I mean, I love this time of year. I love basketball. I'm a huge hoop head. I've always had a special place in my heart for college basketball. So I really like these. Like the first 2 days are great. Saturday and Sunday are great. This is just a great time to be a basketball fan.
Okay, well, we're going to go through this bracket right now. We'll, give you thoughts on most of the matchups, ones that are super obvious or we don't have a lot to say. We'll just move through. We'll tell you some teams that we're playing, some games and numbers to keep an eye on. And we'll start up in the top left corner. If you're looking at your bracket on the bracket that we are looking at, top left corner is the South bracket. So Alabama is the number 1 seed in the South bracket. And it's tough, Eric, because you can't really have the conversation about Alabama without having 2 conversations. One, on the court, they're a fantastic basketball team. No doubt about it. They're one of the best teams in the country. They are very, very well balanced. They have a fantastic offense. They shoot the ball at a high clip. Their defense is very, very good when you're looking at adjusted defensive metrics. But the one thing we talk about with Alabama, their best player, Brandon Miller, was involved in an incident earlier this year where he transported a gun, a murder weapon, to another friend of his that ended up using that weapon. Now, he hasn't been charged with anything. I don't think he should be charged. I'm not saying he should, but it does feel a little bit weird that he hasn't missed 1 second of one game because of that. And that was, I think, the one thing where I was surprised that they didn't take him out of a game or 2, put their own type of suspension on them, because this isn't necessarily a legal issue, but every team has like a code of conduct that the team has to abide by or sign, that you're not going to get involved with this or you're not going to do that. Every time Alabama plays, that's going to be a conversation. And they've tried to get him out in the media a little bit, Eric, but they're not letting him answer any questions about the incident. He just comes with the no comment. You, in some of our conversations, have pointed out this is going to be a little bit of a different animal for him, though, because every time they play, they go out there, the media is going to get bigger and bigger every round, from the first round to the round of 32, then the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final 4. He's going to be dealing with pressure and hostile fan bases and reporters and people that are trying to get really important information out of him. It's hard not to talk about that as well as the basketball with Alabama.
Yeah, it's something that's going to be there, and then plus the effect it has on the teammates and everything like that. It's going to be under a magnifying glass. Don't know. Like, there's so much stuff. I don't want to really get into what happened because
into the specifics of it, because we don't know. We don't know anything.
All we do know is this is going to be times 10, times 20, times 50, times 100 of media attention that these kids are used to. And at the end of the day, these are 21 to 18-year-old kids with a microphone in front of them and a pressure that they're not used to. So it could easily play into it and get a little stressful as it goes on for them.
Eric, have we seen, because they are playing the winner of the game from earlier tonight, have we seen a line for this game pop up yet?
No, I'm still celebrating my big Texas A&M Corpus Christi cover, so I haven't looked at that bad boy yet. I honestly, I will not be betting this game at all. I'm looking right now.
21 and a half. I'm seeing 21 and a half, like 165 and a half for the total. for Alabama. So again, I mean, I've got them moving through this first round. I think they have a pretty good draw, to be honest. I've got West Virginia beating Maryland right below them, Eric. One of the main reasons why I lean that way, Maryland was just really bad on the road this year. West Virginia was not like a fantastic team, as you can see. They're very beatable. They've had plenty of losses throughout the season. But the one thing about West Virginia, they're a little bit more battle tested. They, with Huggins, they're a well-coached team and they're tough. They were 7-11, though, in the Big 12. They lost 6 of 7 games at one point. They are led by Stevenson, who can light it up from 3. He shoots like 38%, and he scores over 15 points a game. I'm going to lean them over a Maryland team that I just wasn't really impressed with them down the stretch. I think their coach has done a fantastic job. But you look at Maryland, they're great at home, 2-9 in true road games. So I'm leaning West Virginia here.
I mean, their last road game they won, Maryland, was February 4th at Minnesota. Before that, the last road game they won was, I believe, at Louisville. So it's not, you know what I mean? It's not really like
they're winning, beating any types of good opponents. Yeah.
No. So it's kind of, it's hard to trust them. When they're playing that poorly on the road. Shot quality is very high on West Virginia. I mean, obviously, West Virginia scores a lot by second chance points and getting to the free throw line. Maryland is very good at rebounding the ball. They don't foul that much. So how is West Virginia going to be able to create some offense? What is West Virginia going to do when Maryland starts to press them? Because Maryland will press. Will their guards start creating turnovers, lead to some easy transition buckets for the Terps? And another big question is, what are the Terps going to do when West Virginia takes Young away? How are they going to be able to generate the offense? I would definitely lean West Virginia here, though. If I were to bet the game, I have West Virginia going through in my bracket, though, just because, as you said, Maryland is so putrid on the road.
Yeah, and then I've got Bama beating West Virginia. I think they're just a little too strong for them there. So I've got Bama moving through on the top into the first of the Sweet 16 teams.
Correct.
You were there, right? Also,
Yeah.
Same thing?
Yes.
And then below them, we've got the 5-12 San Diego State Charleston. This is an interesting matchup, Eric. Charleston shoots a ton of threes. More than 47% of their field goal attempts are 3-pointers. That is more than almost every single team in the country. They shoot at 33%, so it's not like they're the best shooting percentage team. They just shoot a ton of them. In their 3 games in their conference tournament, they took 91 threes over 3 games. And what's cool about them, too, they're a fast tempo team, top 30 in tempo. They're a good offensive rebounding team, top 20 in offensive rebounding. Shoot tons of threes, offensive rebound well, and they play at the 5th quickest tempo of all of the teams in the tournament. And they're going to be playing against a team that's a totally different template from them. It's the San Diego State team that wants to slow you down, that wants to muck it up. Now, San Diego State, when I look at them, I didn't know really what to do in this one. And I actually leaned in the underdog selection here. I think you go the other way. San Diego State, Matt Bradley, really good shooter, started out the season struggling. He's been playing much better as of late. He shot 43% during conference from 3, and they won the league title. From January 14th to March 4th, they only lost twice. But when you look at their losses this year, and you look at the tempo metric, they have lost this year 3 times to quick tempo teams. Arizona was the 9th fastest tempo in the country. New Mexico was the 19th fastest tempo. Arkansas was the 54th fastest tempo. Charleston is actually 29. So something that might impact San Diego State when teams can really speed them up. They struggled a little bit. I will attack Charleston. Talk to us about the Charleston-San Diego State game.
I get your points about fast tempo and everything, but I don't think Charleston is at the level of the teams that you mentioned. I think San Diego State is going to be able to control the tempo. This is a team that's used to being in the tournament. They have the experience. And the Mountain West is a very tough league. I mean, they got Nevada, Boise State,
Utah State.
New Mexico was good until they had their little hiccup in the season. It's a very underrated, tough conference. I think San Diego State, with the veteran leadership they have and being here before, will be able to handle it, control the tempo, and get through.
This is where we'll go slightly different. I'll take the dog. Eric goes San Diego State here. And then right below them, I think we're both on the same side, though, here with Furman. Talk to us about the Furman-Virginia matchup.
I bet at plus the 5. I'll probably sprinkle on the money line. I think they go through. Virginia plays that pack it in style. They'll force Furman to take the threes. Furman averaged the 20 most three-pointers per game at 9.5 in the country. Compared to past Virginia teams, I really feel that its defense isn't as good. Furman's top 40 efficiency with 4 guys averaging over 10.5 points per game. With them being able to stroke the three, this is going to open up the middle for them, where they're one of the better teams in the country shooting field goals. Also, Virginia's offense hasn't looked the same without Vanderplesh. I think they really struggle. What Furman struggles with is when they have to struggle with big athletic forwards. That is not what Virginia has. Virginia is not a big, strong athletic team. If they're playing like a West Virginia, that would be an awful matchup for Furman. A team like Montana State or a team like that was or TCU, Gonzaga, a team with some bigs. This is what Furman's going to struggle with. A team like Virginia that doesn't have those dominant bigs, they're going to be fine against. I like Furman to come through here.
Virginia, this is the worst free throw shooting team that Tony Bennett has had since 2013, 2014. They shoot 70% from the free throw line. You mentioned the health of Ben Vanderplas. There's a reason why this team, it's not the same group of players, but why they've been eliminated in the first round in 2 of their last 3 appearances, because they don't have a whole lot of offensive firepower. Now, scoring defense, they're number 6 in the country. They allow just 60.3 points per game. But they ran into a team that you're pointing out is a bad matchup for them. This is a Furman team that is a very well-built team, and they are sneaky. Furman hasn't been in the dance, I think, since 1980, last time they were there. Here are Furman, a little bit of their resume this year. They don't turn the ball over. They only turned it over on 14% of their possessions. They shot 58% from inside the three-point line. They are the number 1 shooting team in the country from 2-point range, 2-point field goals. They won 15 of their conference games by 16 or more points. They won 5 of those games by 20 or more points. They have 4 players on their roster averaging double figures. They're above average in basically every major offensive category: adjusted efficiency, effective field goal percentage, turnover percentage, offensive rebound percentage, 3-point percentage, 2-point percentage, free throw percentage, percentage of shots blocked, percentage of possessions that end in a steal. And just to put a little icing on the cake, they're led by 2 fifth-year seniors, guys that have experience, that have been around, that won't be shaken and rocked if they get down by a few points early on in this game. I think it's a good matchup for them, Eric. I actually have Furman and Charleston against each other. I've got Furman winning that game and going through. So on the top part of the bracket, I've actually got Bama and Furman as the 2 in the Sweet 16. I think Bama beats them. So I have Alabama on the top part of the South, making it to the Elite 8.
I have Bama against San Diego State with Bama. I'm trying to talk myself into playing San Diego State, but I don't think I'll be able to there.
Yeah, they might be just a little bit overmatched in that particular matchup with the Bama team that is just so tough. So let's go down to the bottom part of the South, Eric, as we look at the bracket here. On the South side, we've got Baylor. We got Creighton, North Carolina State as the 6-11. North Carolina State was one of those final few teams in. And honestly, down the stretch, they really struggled. Looking at North Carolina State, I was kind of surprised they weren't on a play-in line. They lost 3 times to Clemson, to me, which is just sort of weird. They got beat up by Clemson. They lost 3 times to Clemson by at least 14 points. down the stretch, their last 9 games, they were 4-5, and Bartovic had them ranked the number 86 team. They lost at Virginia, at Syracuse. They lost by 25 at home to Clemson. They lost at Duke. And then they lost by 26 in the ACC tournament to Clemson. Not only do I think North Carolina State is just kind of a team struggling right now, I'm very high on Creighton, and I know you're pretty high on them too, right?
Yeah, I like Creighton here. Creighton, you mentioned Clemson. They run a lot of similar offensive sets, and I mean, let's just kind of look at their schedule real quick. NC State, they gave up 80, 96, and I believe 78 in their 3 matchups. So they really had to struggle defending them. NC State likes to press. Creighton, one of the best teams in the country, going up against the press. I absolutely love Creighton here. If you guys are kind of looking for a bet to make, this is getting a little chalky right now, where it's like that 5.5 and 6. But when you look at the first half, it's still sitting at 2.5. NC State was 41% ATS for the first half this year when they were a dog. Flip side, Creighton had the 4th best record ATS in the first half when they were a favorite this year, 67%. McDermott in the tournament against the spread in the first half is an insane 58%. In this game, if I were to bet it, I would take Creighton minus 2.5 for the first half. I think that's a great bet.
They are top 28 in both offense and defensive efficiency. When you look for teams that you want to make a deep run, you look for teams that are balanced just like that are like top 30 in both offense and defensive efficiency. They have 5 players averaging about 12 points a game. They're very, very balanced overall. And of all of the teams in the tournament, they are the most unlucky based on the Ken Palm metrics. So they're due for a little regression to the mean. They're due for a couple games for things to bounce their way in close games. I very much like Creighton, and I think they're drawn really well, Eric, because in this bottom quarter bracket, looking at the teams that are around them, Baylor, Missouri, Utah State, Arizona, none of them are good defensive teams.
Yep.
At all. They're all good offense, bad defense, and Creighton is just really balanced. They feel like they're the best team in this little section. Now, in the next game, Baylor plays UCSB. If we're talking about a team's ceiling, right, like Baylor offensively, if they have a game where they shoot well, they could beat anybody in the country. The problem with Baylor is it's sort of tough to trust them 3 or 4 or 5 games in a row, because if they have one down game shooting wise, they don't have the defense to stop you. And I just look at a second round matchup with Baylor Creighton that I think would be a really nice matchup for Creighton. And even moving forward, I feel like if Creighton were to run into either Missouri, Utah State, or Arizona, they're just the more well-balanced, better built basketball team. And I feel like I have the least amount of concerns about Creighton than I do of like any of the teams down in this quarter bracket.
I mean, my issue with Baylor is 2 things: is A, they're really weak defending the interior of the lane, and B, they switch everything. Because they switch everything, they put their guards. I know their guards are experienced, been there, they've won a title, just in bad situations defensively. Because of that, I'm not high on this Baylor team. I think this UC Santa Barbara team could give them a little fit. That's a pretty big number. I don't think they cover. I think Creighton can get past Baylor. Look, my thing with Arizona is I don't trust their guards. I don't trust their coach. And when you I
don't trust their defense from February 1st. So for the last month and a half now, they have been ranked number 79 in defensive efficiency. You just don't win the championship and you don't make deep runs when your defense is that bad. It's the same thing we're talking about with Baylor, and even more for them. Like with Baylor, you sort of trust their guard play a little bit more. For Arizona, they're so big, like centralized around the bigs. If they're not getting the ball into Tabellis and to Ballo, they're in trouble. We saw last year Tabellis kind of struggled against better teams, against better competition, when they were able to take him out of the game and make like difficult for him. I've got them winning 1 game, Arizona. and then losing. And I've got them losing to Missouri. I think you've got Utah State winning, but I honestly don't think – I think whoever matches up with them, it's a bad matchup for Arizona because both of those teams can score. I think Missouri is averaging over 80 points a game this year, and Utah State is just below that. They're averaging just under 80 points a game. Both of those teams are going to light it up offensively. I don't think Arizona gets a good draw here. I don't actually have them winning more than one game here, Eric.
Yeah, I think they win too. You and I differ on the Missouri.
Yeah, you go Utah State. Talk to us a little bit about that game, why you like Utah State there.
Utah State, when looking at it, they're better. They're good at defending the three-pointer. Missouri, that's what they like to do. They led the SEC in three-pointer attempts. Missouri likes to press and play zone. Utah State is very good against both of those. Missouri gives up a lot of threes per game. Utah State has the 5th best shooting percentage from three in the country. And my thing is this, is the SEC was the worst conference. Like when you look at every single conference there is, they were the worst conference shooting the three-pointers. Because of that, these teams kind of changed the way they were playing defense and let teams
shoot the three because that was the best way to defend them.
Now, when you play a team that is making a three, I really think they're going to have that deer in headlights look, kind of like the Big Ten does when the game is officiated differently and these teams can't adjust. You know what I mean? Like you're used to a whole season playing a certain way, and now you're playing. Now it's a different way. I think it's going to be a little different. So,
for example, Missouri allow 44% of shots against Missouri are three-pointers.
Mm-hmm.
So they just let you shoot threes.
Yep.
If you're making them, you could beat them. If you don't make them, they're a tough team, though, because they're going to score with you. Like I said, they'll score over 80 points. They're led by Kobe Brown and Hodge. Those are two of the top 11 players in all of college basketball in offensive rating, based on players that are used in at least 20% of their possessions. So they do, if a game gets close down the stretch, they've got the guys that can make plays. Kobe Brown is an absolute stud. He is named after Kobe, and they have wins this year over Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee, so they could beat good opponents. But like you said, if you're a team that shoots really well and is hitting those threes, that's how you might be able to beat them. And that's something that Utah State might be able to do. My only concern with Utah State is their metrics are fantastic. And as you pointed out, the Mountain West was very, very good. And this is a coach that led UMBC to beat Virginia when they were the 16 seed. This is the very same coach. He's now with Utah State. They haven't really beaten anybody. That's my only concern. They lost all 3 times to San Diego State. Their best win this year was against Oral Roberts, and they beat Boise State twice. They've got a win over Washington State. Like, they really haven't played top tier level. So I'm wondering if maybe the athletes of Missouri might be trouble for them. But this will be one of those head up beer bet games for you and I. What was this line, like Missouri minus 2.5, or Utah State minus about 2? It's now down to about 1.5. I'm seeing Utah State by about 1.5.
Yeah, I think this opened up as a pick, and then Utah State became like 2, then it got bet down to 1.5.
Yep. So in this spot, Eric, down here, I have Missouri beating Utah State. I have Missouri getting through against Arizona in an upset because I think Missouri can score with them, go up and down. I'm not quite as worried about Arizona shooting against them, like we mentioned. I think Baylor-Creighton is going to be a really interesting game. I will probably lean Creighton there. I'm going to go Creighton moving on. Creighton against Missouri in the 6-7. I've got Creighton moving through that game. So in my South Regional Final, I have Alabama versus Creighton to make it to the Final Four. I'm going to lean Alabama. If that ends up happening, I probably will be betting Creighton in that game. But I do, in a weird sense, in my head, I feel like we're going to have to hear about the Alabama Brandon Miller stuff all the way through. I'm going to have them making it all the way to the national championship. But we'll talk more about the Final Four in a second. For me, Bama, Creighton in the South final, and I've got Bama winning the South. Finish up the South bracket for us.
Yeah, I got Creighton over Baylor, Arizona over Utah State. I think Creighton's defense and their offense efficiency is going to be too much for Arizona. Then I got Creighton against Alabama. I'm going to take Creighton here. I just think that Alabama plays two ways. They shoot threes and then dribble drive. With the 7-footer, Creighton's very good at defending the rim, and I think the wings are going to be able to keep the 3-point shooters in front of them, and not give them space. So because of that, I like Creighton. I think Creighton can shock the world and pull off the upset.
Creighton coming out of the South. I like it. We both are very high on Creighton. Both have them at least into the Elite Eight. Eric, even farther around into the Final Four. Let's move right below and let's go to the East, where Purdue is your number 1 seed out East. And for Purdue, I'm not very high on them going deep into this tournament, but I do want to mention that Zach Edey has been awesome this year. He's made 75% of his attempts at the rim per hoop math. They beat Marquette, Gonzaga, Duke, and when you double Edey, it leaves the rest of Purdue's key players open. I just don't trust the rest of them, honestly. Down the stretch, they were 4-4 in their last 8 games in the Big Ten, and when going into the Big Ten tournament, and then when you look at what they did in the Big Ten tournament, so their wins might look a little bit better on paper, because keep in mind, they play Rutgers, who's banged up and super injured right now. Then they played Ohio State. Ohio State was that their 4th day in a row that they were playing?
Yeah.
And they also were missing their leading scorer, Ohio State. And then in the final game against Penn State, they had a big lead and they blew that lead and almost lost the game. I don't really trust them down the stretch, but I want to give a ton of credit to Edey, because this was one of those guys, Eric, that you look at and you're like, man, this is a big guy, but he's never going to be athletic, or he's never going to be much. This dude worked hard. His footwork is improved. He's a smart player. He was really, really good this year. He is deserving of the Player of the Year. All that being said, I don't like their draw. I think they win one game, and they will have a very tough matchup from either the 8 or the 9. I'm extremely high on Memphis, though, and I have Memphis having a deep, deep run into this tournament. So I think that's where they're going to hit a little bit of a snag. I've got Purdue winning. I've got them losing to Memphis in the following game. In the 5-12, I've got Oral Roberts beating Duke. This is an Oral Roberts team that 2 years ago was led by Max Amos, and they made the Sweet 16. This team is better this year. They went out in the non-conference. They scheduled up. They wanted to give themselves tough opponents so that they were ready for this opportunity, and they have not taken their foot off the gas for a while now. I think they head into this with a 17-game winning streak, which is the longest in the nation, and this is a very, very good basketball team. So Max Osmus, who averages 22 points a game and 4 assists, he's there. But they also have a 7'5" transfer from Arkansas last year that helps them light it up. They lost a game to New Mexico at New Mexico. You were pointing out that New Mexico was pretty good earlier in the year. That's a tough place to play. And that was a game that they rescheduled because their opponent wasn't able to play and had to forfeit a game. Their 4 losses this year that were on the road: at St. Mary's, at Houston, and at Utah State. So they were 3-3 in their first 6. They played really, really tough teams on the road. They are number 26 overall in experience. And when you compare that to Duke, Duke is number 295 in the country. There are only 4 teams in this whole tournament that are less experienced than Duke. They ran into a very, very tough opponent in Oral Roberts. I like Oral Roberts here, Eric. I think they get the upset. I think a lot of people are kind of picking against Tennessee because they're banged up, but I think Tennessee gets through at least that first game. So I've got Purdue winning, Memphis winning, Oral Roberts winning, Tennessee winning, and I've got Oral Roberts beating Tennessee. I've also got Memphis beating Pitt. And when we dive into Memphis to talk a little bit about them, this is a team that is playing as hot as anybody right now in the country. I'm actually surprised I thought they were maybe a tad underseeded, but I think it's a pretty good spot for them to put a real scare into Purdue. Entering the AAC championship game, they had only lost 4 games since January 1st, and 2 of them came against Houston, which is one of the national championship contenders here. They lost one of those games, or the other 2 losses they had were both in overtime. Since February the 7th, they're 9-2. Bartovic has them ranked the number 8 overall team. They have Kendrick Davis, who's one of the best scorers in the nation. DeAndre Williams is 26 years old, and he scored 35 points the other day. I think this is a well-built team. They're athletic. To me, I think they're very, very interesting. I have them making a deep run and upsetting Purdue in round 2, Eric. So talk to us about this part of the quarter bracket.
One more thing to add to Edey. I mean, dude's a nice guy. So, like, the Big Ten tournament was here in Chicago. Some of the kids I coach actually ran into him at a Chipotle, and he spent time when he really didn't have to talking to every single one of those kids. So,
you love that stuff.
He is a good dude. Memphis FAU. Look, whoever wins this game, I feel is going to knock off Purdue. FAU as guys that can stretch the floor. They have a big guy that can guard Edey. Memphis, elite defensive pressure, point guard that can take over a game.
I mean, they're 25 in KenPom. It's not a surprise. This is a good basketball team. They've been good all year long. They're 30-3. They only lost 3 games. It's 31-3. This is a really good basketball team too.
So I think they match up well with Purdue. It's going to be interesting to see what Prater does with his guards. We saw in the Big Ten Championship, in their first game against Rutgers. Rutgers, they pressed. They got up in the face of the freshman guards. They had some trouble. Prater had to go to a little bit more of a veteran lineup there, take those guys out. Is he going to pull the trigger and do that? But yeah, I have Memphis going there, making it to the Sweet 16. I have Oral Roberts over Duke. My thing with Duke is this. If Duke gets through this game, I think they're going to the Final Four. But I can see them losing this game just because of the matchup with the size and the interior. And the big thing that's going to happen is the big guy from Arkansas, whose name I'm obviously spacing on, is going to force Lively away from the hoop. And I really don't think he's that comfortable away from the hoop. So I really think that's a good thing for Oral Roberts. Better defensively, more battle tested this year. ACC is down. Duke, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I agree with you.
ACC is down, or because they're this good. I will take Oral Roberts. Tennessee, Louisiana doesn't shoot the 3 well enough to beat Tennessee in my eyes. They run all their stuff through Brown, through their player, last name Brown, interior fella. But Tennessee has the size to combat that. I think Tennessee gets through. Then they play Oral Roberts. Like I said, any team that can shoot the 3 that's playing against the SEC team, I'm going to be all about. So I'll take Oral Roberts. But I think Oral Roberts' run is going to end against Memphis. I think Memphis is too much defensively. So I'll take Memphis to get past Oral Roberts.
Connor Vanover is the big man from Oral Roberts, a 7'5" transfer from Arkansas. And we're very high on Memphis's chances. And you look at Memphis's metrics, they fit the metrics of a team that can make a deep run. They are number 26 in offensive efficiency, number 36 in defensive efficiency. Just a balanced team that doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses when you go through their resume, when you go through like their strengths, their weaknesses overall. We talk about experience. They're number 11 in the country in experience with a 26-year-old on their team. So they've been there. They've dealt with tough competition. They've been in games with Houston. We both like Memphis coming out of the top part of the bracket there. I've got Memphis in the Elite 8 in the regional final. Then on the bottom part of the bracket, Eric, this is where both of our 2 teams play, and you and I are going to go to war, Eric. So first up, it'll be Kentucky and Providence. And while Providence is a very, very well-coached team, they entered the tournament in bad form. They were just not playing well down the stretch. And what was concerning for them, normally you can kind of lean on their defense. And defensively, they really, really struggled down the stretch. So that was why I'm against Providence. I think the metrics that I were looking at, Over the last 9 games, they were 4-5. But for example, Kentucky was only 5-4. But in those same games, Providence was ranked number 92 based on the metrics, and Kentucky was still a top 30 team in overall efficiency. Like, over the last 9 games, Providence was behind Furman, was in front of Cal State Fullerton based on Bartovic metrics. This year, during their 15-game stretch where they went 7-8, they were ranked 154 in defensive efficiency. This just doesn't feel like that same Providence team. And while Kentucky has been a little bit up and down this year, I think Kentucky's got a great draw in this bottom of the bracket here, Eric, because they run into a Providence team that's not in great form. And I think Kentucky should be able to wear them down. Following that game, I don't like Kansas State at all. I didn't have them upset in the first round, but I think you do, right? You've got Montana State beating them.
Yeah, I have Montana State beating them. I think it's just a lot of these teams, like there's certain teams, certain things they do well, certain things they kind of struggle with, and that's kind of what Montana State does. Kansas State, elite at home, really struggles on the road. Montana State, very good defensive team. They have the Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year on his team. K-State struggles to defend the rim, and Montana State likes to attack the rim. K-State fouls a lot, and Montana is 11th in the country in free throws attempted per game. K-State gave up the second most free throw attempts per game in the Big 12. Now you're playing a team that in the country is getting to the line the 11th most times per game. So they're going to be able to generate some free points. Montana State likes to run stuff through the post. And K-State really struggles. I think just stylistic wise, this is a brutal matchup for K-State. And we've seen them when they haven't played at home. They've played some duds on the road. So I like Montana State to get that upset.
They lost 7 of their 8 final games on the road, Kansas State. They lost at TCU, at Iowa State, at Kansas, at Texas Tech, at Oklahoma, at West Virginia, and they lost their first game in the Big 12 championship game and a neutral site game to TCU. I think they're a little bit overranked, just like a little bit overhyped with the 3 seed. To me, just a little too high for them.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. Kentucky, I mean, look, you don't know what you're going to get. It's kind of like one of my friends used this analogy when we were talking earlier today. It's like a blind date. You don't know what you're going to get. You're walking
it's good.
blind. You have no idea what you're going to get from them. So do I think they beat Providence? Yeah, I think they beat Providence. Providence is trending in the downward trajectory. But am I going to bet it? There's no way in hell I'm going to bet it. So that's just a pass for me. Next game, look, I'm looking at it like this. This is
you're a Michigan State guy. So what give us a little bit of a breakdown for your team. What are we supposed to expect from Michigan State? Who is this team this year?
So Michigan State, they really struggled when Hall wasn't on the court. Hall is starting to get a little bit healthy. The key thing for this for me when I was looking at this game is USC kind of plays a little bit version of the pack it in and forces you to take threes. They like to protect the interior. Michigan State,
they're fantastic defending the 2, and they have like 3 guys that are pretty close to 7 foot, and they have a lot of length. So USC defensively inside the perimeter, they're fantastic. But you're hitting on the right. If you make your 3, you're gonna get threes. You're gonna have threes to shoot if you want them.
And Michigan, just kind of looking at Michigan State. Michigan State had the 3rd best 3-point per shooting percentage in all of college basketball. So if Michigan State's making their threes, I don't know what USC is going to be able to do. They're going to have to change their flow defensively. Is that something that they're going to do mid-game? Also, one thing Michigan State has started to do is they have this guy, Joey Hauser, who is versatile and he can play the 5, but he's built like a small forward. So when they have him play the 5, what is USC going to do to combat that?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
The key will be because USC has 3 bigs that they rotate in as their bigs, but they don't really have a way to go small ball 5 if they have to. They don't do that. So that could be a matchup problem if it's Josh Morgan, who's one of the best shot blockers in the country. I don't know what the health of Big Vince is going to be, but he's all three of USC's bigs are under the basket shot blocking type bigs. They're not stretch the court, stretch the floor big. So you're absolutely right. That could be a major matchup problem for them.
And then what's Peterson's health? That's a big thing. We really don't see people with back injuries miraculously get better. Even if he plays, I really think
he didn't look good after a week. The thing is, he had a week off because he got the back injury against Arizona in the first half of the Arizona game. And the thing about Drew Peterson is, if you look at his numbers, he is one of the best overall players in all of college basketball, meaning points, rebounds, assists, a little bit of everything. And when he can't do a little bit of everything, well, USC is just a completely different team. Like what makes USC good when they were completely healthy, they had a good 3 or 4 week stretch where they were actually playing like a top 10 team based on Bartovic, because their offense is way better when everybody can just play their role. Otherwise, they get really heavy with Boogie Ellis, and Boogie can sometimes match up with guards that are a little bit bigger size than him. Boogie will struggle. It all comes down to Drew. Like, if he looks like he's moving fine early in the game, if he's able to make a few passes and post up, it'll be a close game. If Drew Peterson is standing outside in the three-point line and he's not able to drive the lane, in the first 5 minutes, we're going to find this out. USC is going to be in big trouble. Now, they can, like, Boogie Ellis is the type of guy who can win a game or two for you. He legitimately has NBA range, and he's stretched it out, and he's really impressive a couple feet behind the three-point line. And I really do like this team. They got to be fully healthy, though. Even recently, like Big Vince Iwachumu, he's missed the last 2 or 3 games. Now, all of a sudden, when you have your backup big who plays 20 minutes and who's really, really good, if he's not in there, now you're just not, like, they're not good enough to be missing any one player. That's the problem with USC. Like, they're not deep enough, like the best of the top tier Power 5, Power 6 conferences. So 1 or 2 guys missing, that really hurts them. If this team and Drew Peterson looks healthy overall, whoever wins this game can beat Marquette. USC can absolutely beat Marquette, and so can Michigan State. Because what both of our teams do well is they both defend very well. And like USC is one of the best defensive teams in the country. So like you said, you will have a tough time getting to the rim and getting easy buckets against them. Now, I'm sure you probably, in a close game like this, like, you lean Michigan State. You got to go with Michigan State. Ken Palm has this, Eric, which is kind of cool, as a 1-point game. Literally, they've got this as one of the most exciting games on the whole Friday slate. I think they have it as the third on their thrill rankings, the games that are supposed to be the most exciting, the most competitive. This one is third out of all 16. And we're going to open up. This is the first game we get on Friday.
Yeah, first game on Friday. Also, I think a big thing is Hogard and Walker for Michigan State. Those guys, I mean, are good at not turning the ball over. You have 2 guys that can bring it up, 2 basically point guards playing at the same time.
What is a weakness of Michigan State? What's something that scares you if they get beat? Because for USC, we've talked about it.
Michigan State lives and dies by the 3. Like, if their threes aren't falling, they don't have many ways to beat you. That's why they lost to Ohio State. They just shot bad. And like, when you have a team that's so dependent on the 3 and your best player like Hogard is very good at getting to the rim, but he's not good at that mid-court jump shot. Walker, very good at that mid-court jump shot, but if he has a elite defender on him, it's really hard for him to create space. Hauser's more of a catch and shoot 3-pointer guy that can post you up. They just really, if they had a guy that could just get a bucket, they'd be tough, and that's what they're going to get next year in the class. But they're missing it this year. They live and die by the 3. I just think that they can just create a little bit of matchups. And with USC is going to let them shoot the three, I just think it plays in their hands. I took Michigan State minus the 1.5.
Yeah, the big thing that USC struggles with, which is bizarre because like we're talking about, USC has very good size. They're the fifth biggest team in the country as far as overall size, but they don't offensive rebound. They don't defensive rebound all that well. They give up offensive rebounds, which is sort of weird. Michigan State, though, as you're pointing out, like you're not a prolific offensive rebounding team, so you may not be a team that can really impact USC with that. But for SC, it's just going to come down to the health of Peterson. When he's good, everybody slots in perfectly and everybody has their role. Drew Peterson and Boogie get to be the guys that initiate everything. Reese Sticks and Waters can be your scorer who just lights it up, comes off the bench, and he doesn't have to get anybody else involved. It's all about him. Then you have Kobe Johnson and Trey White. They can hit some threes. They can play defense. They're good wings. And you have like Big Vince, and you have Joshua Morgan and Kajani Wright. You have three bigs, and two of them are very, very, very good. And Kajani Wright's a freshman who's actually was a McDonald's All-American who has some upside. When they miss one of those guys, everybody has to step up a level, and it just doesn't work. It's like it just doesn't work. The whole operation is off. Drew Peterson is the key, and I hope, win or lose, I hope he's healthy enough in this game to score 10 or 15 points, because he's one of those guys, Eric, he's been one of the best USC Trojans in the history of the program. He's been around this program for the last 4 years. They've won a ton of games. He's been like a really good leader. He's stepped up. I hope that even if we lose, he gets a game where he at least plays well, because I could see it in his face. I felt bad for him because his last 3 games, after 4 awesome years, his last 3 games the guy couldn't move and he's holding onto his back. That's just a crappy way to end with injuries for guys who have played. And like a guy like Drew, he's not going to be an NBA player, I don't think. He could go play in Europe somewhere, but he's not like an NBA guy. So this is it for him. And I hope he's able to have a good showing of himself on his way out, because this is going to go down as one of the better USC Trojan basketball players and just good guys for the program. So good luck to you, my friend. Cheers on this one. USC, Michigan State. We go right at each other in round 1. And whoever wins that game, I actually have them beating Marquette. And I have Kentucky coming out of the bottom part of this bracket. I've got Kentucky getting through Kansas State, and I've got Kentucky beating USC moving along. And I have Kentucky and Memphis in my East Regional Final. Coming out of the East, I have Memphis into the Final 4. Talk us through the bottom part of the East, Eric.
I have Michigan State beating USC, and then I have Michigan State losing to Marquette. Then I have Marquette going on to play Kentucky. I just have Marquette. I don't know. There's just something about them. That with how they do offensively, how well they're playing, how they can hide their defensive efficiencies on the glass. I like Marquette to make it all the way to the Elite 8 to play Memphis. And then I have Memphis. I don't know. There's just something about this team I really like with their guard play and their defensive intensity and everything. They seem to be peaking at the right time.
Memphis is the team for me and Eric coming out of the East. Let's head to the opposite side of the bracket, buddy. Let's talk about the Midwest on the top half with Houston. So go ahead, talk to us a little bit about this top part of the Midwest bracket.
In terms of the top part of the Midwest, Houston is playing a team that runs zone. Anytime Houston plays a team that runs zone, look to take any player prop rebounds. Houston had 20 rebounds, offensive rebounds. Not rebounds, offensive rebounds against Memphis. This team can hit the glass, especially against a team that plays zone. I love them against Northern Kentucky, obviously. Iowa against Auburn. I mean, basically 2 hours away from campus. Tough for Iowa to go there when Auburn should have the home court advantage. But even though it's close to the proximity to campus, Auburn still did struggle when they didn't play at home. So you have to figure those guards will still struggle a little bit. Auburn does give up a lot of threes. One thing we know about Iowa is they like to shoot the threes. But on the flip side, Fran has shown us he's really not that good of a coach in this tournament. Historically, he's lost, never made to the Sweet 16, early loss to Richmond. This
They
game,
lost. They were one and done last year. And remember, everybody was jumping on them as a team to make a really deep run.
And then when you look at them, 12-4 at home, 4-7 away, 0-4 in neutrals. I mean, that's Iowa this year. I don't know. Like, for me, I think this is a true coin flip game. Both teams' defenses are a nightmare. Green, who filters the offense through Auburn, struggles when he's not playing at home. I did bet Murray over 2.5 threes at plus money. I like that bet in this game. I took Iowa just because, I'm fading SEC teams anytime they play a team that can shoot threes. Then I have that Iowa just getting boat raced by Houston. I think Houston's just going to play bully ball against them. Underneath that, we got Miami against Drake. Obviously, this comes down to, is Miami's big guy playing? I don't know. Like, if their big guy plays, he is such a key to them defensively. I think they beat Drake. If he's not, I think Drake gets the win here. It's a complete coin flip game. To me, it depends on that. So I'm going to wait to see that. If I had to pick right now because of the uncertainty of the big man, I take Drake. Indiana against Kent State. This is an awful matchup for Indiana. Kent State, elite defensively, especially in the interior. They're going to be able to limit Jackson Davis. I think that Kent State is live here. I think they beat Indiana. Then it's Kent State against Drake. Physical, grimy game. I think Kent State can beat Drake. I think Kent State could actually make it to the Sweet 16 if they're matched up against Drake. If they play in Miami, a team with all those guards, I think they're going to struggle a little bit with what Miami does with spacing. So if it's Miami against Kent State, I'll take Miami. If it's Kent State against Drake, I'll take Kent State going out there against Houston. Then I have Houston all the way to the Elite Eight.
It feels just like a really good draw for Houston, right?
Looking who's for a better draw.
Like, who's all around them? The 8-9 matchup, you get a team like Iowa who has no defense whatsoever. Their defense is miserable. Or a team like Auburn, like you said, like Auburn has some close losses there, but Auburn was 4-9 in their last 13 games down the stretch. And the thing about Auburn, they don't really do, like, offensively, they're not really good at anything. They're just like athletic. They can get to the rim and, they can maybe like you can have some matchup problems because they do have some size and athleticism, but they don't really shoot the ball well. They're not efficient. They turn it over a ton. The only reason why I leaned Auburn is because Auburn's offense is okay. Their defense is pretty good, Auburn's, and I think they'll be at home or close to home. I think their defense will be able to slow down the Iowa offense a little bit. And I just don't think the Iowa defense is anything at all. It's absolutely miserable. So in a pick'em type game, I'm leaning Auburn. But I don't think Auburn's going to get through Houston. They may have a home crowd there in that game in Birmingham, and a few people rooting for Auburn, but I've got Houston getting through. And I'm in total agreement with you, Eric. I have Drake beating Miami in that game because we don't know with Miami the health of the big man. And I'm not all that high on the ACC this year either. We picked against Duke earlier. I don't know how strong the conference was this year. And Drake is number 9 in the Bartovic rankings over their last 10 games. This is a team that's top 50 in defensive efficiency, top 30 in turnover percentage. Their coach and his son, they're led by their head coach with his son, who's a sophomore, averages 19 points a game, 39% from 3. This team is 16-2 in their last 18 games. They're a very good team. I'm with you. I've got Drake winning that game against Miami. For Eric, the real key comes down to the health of the big man, and I would agree. And then Kent State. I'm also with you on Kent State here. This is a team that had the lead at Houston with 3 minutes to go in the game back in November this year. And they ended up losing that game, but they were up by 10 in the first half. They showed you they could compete with Houston at Houston. Then a week later, They're playing Gonzaga at Gonzaga. They have a 4-point lead in that game before failing late, but they had competitive games on the road at Houston, at Gonzaga. They're now 10-1 in their last 11 games, and they're top 30 in defensive efficiency. They check a lot of boxes. What I like about them, like Indiana is not a consistent team, right? They're up and down. And if they run into a team that has like a solid defense that every time down the court, they're just going to make you make a good play, make a smart play. This could be a little bit of trouble for Indiana. It really could.
We've seen what Indiana is. I mean, we've said it all year. They just kind of struggle when they play on the road. And, this is a quote unquote road game. It's a neutral site game. So I think Kent State's very live here. There's a lot of sharp money that is on Kent State to come through.
Okay. So, Eric, we both have Kent State and Drake. I agree with you. I've got Kent State making it through, losing to Houston in a rematch of a game that was earlier this year at Houston. So I've got Houston getting through there. On the bottom part of the Midwest bracket, we've got Iowa State playing the winner of the Mississippi State Pitt game. Did that game go?
Yeah.
Final?
Yeah,
Mississippi State. Okay.
No, Pitt won.
Pitt won that one. Okay, so Pitt won by a point 60-59. So Pitt will be playing Iowa State. And one thing when we were having the conversation a little earlier, great matchups for Iowa State, whoever they would have played, because they've got a very good defense, but they can't really score. And so Pitt plays sort of right into their strengths.
It's a absolute phenomenal matchup for Iowa State. I don't know how Iowa State keeps getting these matchups.
Same thing last year. Yeah.
It doesn't play that good a defense like we talked about. Iowa State's going to be able to score. I think Iowa State's is going to make stuff a little bit hard for Pitt. So I definitely like Iowa State there.
Now, below them, we've got Xavier, Kennesaw State. Xavier is an interesting team. They lost one of their best players down the stretch, but they still were 6-3 after losing him. Xavier is coming out of what was a pretty strong Big East this year. They're the number 3 seed in the Midwest. Now, Kennesaw State is your 14 seed. Winner of them will play Iowa State Pitt winner. Eric, who do you like here? Xavier, Kennesaw State?
I'm trying to really talk myself into Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State did play Indiana tough, tied at halftime. Indiana pulled away in the second half. I think they could make it a little bit feisty here for the first half, but I think Xavier does end up winning. Excuse me. And then below that, Penn State against Texas A&M. I mean, this is just a great matchup for Penn State. You look
and
at
this is what you've been talking about and preaching, the 3-point shooting teams against the SEC teams that didn't have to play a lot of good 3-point shooting teams. Win or lose, this is the matchup you're looking for.
Yeah, this is the matchup. I couldn't ask for anything else. Texas A&M gets second chance points and foul and lives on the free throw line. Penn State doesn't foul. They're pretty good at rebounding. Excuse me. I think this is a great matchup for Penn State. Texas A&M does give up a lot of threes, and we saw when they played Missouri and Alabama, when those threes are going in, how much they struggle. Penn State, 51% of their shots are three-pointers. I like Penn State here plus the 3. And I have them straight up winning the game. Texas Colgate. To me, like on my show, my guest tonight said Colgate was going to shock the world and pull it off because Texas's historic collapses in the tournament. I just don't see it. I think Colgate.
Well, isn't that more of a Barnes thing though? Like a coaching thing than this Texas,
Barnes,
right?
Because Shaka Smart, both of them.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. This is a different coach. This is a different group. I like the fact that Timmy Allen, they said, is going to be healthy and full strength for the tournament. And when you dive into Texas overall, they've been playing some fantastic basketball down the stretch.
I think Texas is on their way to the Elite Eight. I think they get past Penn State, I think they're going to then play Iowa State in the Sweet 16 and set up a great matchup in the Elite Eight with Houston. Right now, I have Houston winning it, but I'm going back and forth. I could easily see Texas winning that game.
Yeah, Texas with their assistant, Rodney Terry, who was put up to head coach earlier in the year. They're led by Marcus Carr and Timmy Allen. They're just a well-balanced team, too. Number 11 in defensive efficiency, number 18 in offensive efficiency. They beat Kansas by 16-plus points twice in their last 4 games. And while they did lose their last 4 true road games, they won the Big 12 tourney on a neutral court. So I think it's a good spot for them. And you have Penn State. It would be a blast to get a Texas A&M game in that second round, like just for the fans and stuff. That would be a really fun game to watch. I agree with you. I've got Texas getting through. I have Xavier moving along and beating Iowa State, and then I have Texas beating Xavier. And I'm in the same boat with you. Depending on what the line in that game is, like I might bet Texas come that game. And so that's the one decision that I'm having a hard time making. Texas or Houston moving through to the Final Four. It's going to be one of those two for me. But this is the only of the 4 regions where I have the number 1 and the number 2 seed in the final.
Me too.
So this is the one that I thought they drew well, and Texas is playing great right now. They're the 2 seed in the Midwest. Let's move to the West, Eric. We finish it up down here in the West. Number 1 seed, Kansas. They're playing Howard. I've got Kansas moving through there. I wasn't really sure what to do with the Arkansas-Illinois game. You have an Arkansas team that came into the season that was very highly projected, that was very highly ranked. Remember, this is an Arkansas team that I believe has made back-to-back Elite Eights, but they've lost 4 of their last 5. They had an 18% turnover rate on offensive possessions. That was ranked 11th out of 14 teams in the SEC. No, Nick Smith Jr., you mentioned, didn't really kind of take that next step that we were hoping. And down the stretch, lost 4 out of 5. Coach was sort of losing his cool in the conference tournament. I think I'm going to lean Illinois in. It's like a tight either-or game here. When we look at Illinois, they were 7-2 from basically in the month of January, and they gave themselves a shot for the Big Ten title. Then they struggled down the stretch, 4-6 in their last 10, but they do have Terrence Shannon Jr., who played into the Sweet 16 last year for Texas Tech. I think in a close game, I can lean on him to carry them through their first round opponent. But I do think whoever wins this game will get beat by Kansas in the second round. So I'll just have Illinois winning 1 game, losing to Kansas. Then below them in the 4-5, St. Mary's, they have been a computer darling all year long. St. Mary's is a number 5 seed. They are, if you look at a lot of their advanced metrics, they are fantastic. One of the top teams in KenPom. They did beat Gonzaga one time this year. And what is nice about St. Mary's is they have a kid that can go get you a bucket, but you will point out he's a young kid. He's a freshman, so he hasn't necessarily played in a bunch of huge games, but they do have a good defense. I'm going to roll St. Mary's through this game. And then we get to UConn, Eric, who I know you and I are both very, very high on. I absolutely love UConn. I think they got a good draw, and I just think their team overall is one of the best teams in the country with their best performances. They beat Alabama, Iowa State, Creighton, Marquette this year. They're led by Sonogo, who averages just about 17 points per game. This is the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. They have 2 guys, Jordan Hawkins and Alex Caravan, who shoot better than 38% from 3. Tristan Newton is also very, very good. He can average in double digits, just over 10 points a game. They are top 15 in offense and defensive efficiency. They're number 6 in defense. They're number 4 in KenPom. All 4 of their top scorers shoot 35% from 3. They're above average in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, 2-point percentage. They're ranked number 11 in defensive field goal percentage against. They're 15th in defensive 3-point percentage against. They're 24th in block percentage. They're above average in turnover percentage created. Eric, they've got size, they've got offense, they have a defense, they're well balanced. during their last 11 games, they went 9-2. The only games they lost by 3 points on the road at Creighton, a team that you and I both like. They lost by 2 points to the number 2 seed in this tournament, the one of the 2 seeds, Marquette. And in the game against Marquette, they shot 7 for 25 from 3, and Marquette shot 11 of 29, and they won by 2. And in that game, Hawkins and Newton were a combined 4 for 24 from the field. They are the number 2 ranked team in the entire nation based on Bartovic over their last 7 games. And based on luck metrics, they're actually one of the most unlucky teams in the tournament. Only 3 teams in this entire tournament of 68 have been unluckier than them throughout the year. Super high on UConn. Eric, talk to us a little bit more about why you like this team.
I mean, basically everything you've said.
I had a lot to
They
do there.
can score on the interior. They have a couple guys that can make threes. They can rebound. They can get second chance points. They can defend. And then when you just kind of look at their matchups, okay, let's just kind of go through it. VCU, they have the guards where if they play them and VCU plays their pressing style to break the pressure. Plus, I don't think plus they have the size to handle VCU's interior. I don't think VCU has the size to handle their interior. They play St. Mary's. St. Mary's is going to play that slow, grind it out style. UConn's very comfortable with that. Plus, they have shooters that can extend the floor and open up the interior for the big man. And now let's go into the top half. You got Kansas over Howard. Arkansas, Illinois, to me, look, both these teams in my eyes insanely underachieved this year. Yeah. I just am very
disappointing.
Either one of these teams. For me, this is exactly like the Iowa Auburn. Exactly.
Totally agree.
SEC, Big Ten underachievers. I'll give the lean to Arkansas just because Arkansas has 3 guys that are going to be drafted probably in the first round.
Yeah.
So I'll give it to them. I like Underwood as a coach, but I just don't think Underwood has the dogs this year. Go to Kansas. Kansas, you know what? You've mentioned how they've had 2 bad losses to Texas, and they could be ripe for an upset, but I don't think it's here against this Arkansas team. I have them going through. Then I have them using to UConn. UConn has the athleticism on the wings to disrupt Kansas's flow and the big men to disrupt Kansas's interior offense. So I like UConn here to go through that. I got UConn all the way to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, and even in just like a really simple sense, like, you know, UConn is a higher ranked KenPom team than Kansas, even like in metrics, right? We're not reaching even with this. This is a team that has a fantastic resume there. Eric and I both have UConn beating Kansas and moving along there, making it to the Elite Eight. And in the bottom part of the West bracket, TCU versus the winner of tomorrow, Wednesday night's play-in game. I like TCU there against whoever the matchup is, Arizona or Nevada. Below them, it's Gonzaga. I think they just have a little bit too much firepower for Grand Canyon. Northwestern, Boise State. That's a game where both teams don't want to score at all. I'm going to play, actually already did play the under, and it's already moved like 1.5 down in the direction. So if you like that under, try to lock that one in pretty soon because it looks like the number keeps moving down. I'm leaning Boise State there. And then I get UCLA in the bottom, the 215. I do have UCLA beating Boise State. I don't think the Jaden Clark injury will hurt UCLA until they get to the Sweet 16, whether it be Gonzaga or TCU. That matchup, I feel like Mike Miles Jr. or having to deal with Timmy and all of the Gonzaga talent, that would be where UCLA could really use Clark. I don't know if it's going to impact them in the first 2 games against teams that I think they're just a little bit better than. You'll point out Asheville is going to be a little feisty because they have a good offense. They can score. That's not the case with either Northwestern or Boise State. So I don't think they'll be able to take advantage of that for UCLA. But whomever plays UCLA in the Sweet 16, the 6 or the 3, if it is TCU or Gonzaga, I think they beat UCLA in that spot. I lean Gonzaga, Eric, and the only reason is the Lampkin stuff with TCU. I think if he was there, I probably would have put TCU all the way through, but I'm a big fan of Mike Miles Jr. It would not shock me at all if TCU is able to beat Gonzaga, because the thing we know about Gonzaga, fantastic offensively, but defensively, they struggle. Now, they have been playing some of the best basketball in the country of anyone this year. They're number 1 in adjusted offensive efficiency. But they didn't hit the top 100 in defensive efficiency when they had an incredible. So the last month, they're number 1 in offensive efficiency. They're shooting 63% from 2. They're shooting 38% from 3. They're crushing teams, but they're still not even in the top 100 in defensive efficiency.
Yeah.
That's what's a little bit concerning with them. They score 87.5 points per game. That's number 1 in the nation. But teams that have this bad of a defense, just like we said with Baylor, just like we've said with teams like Iowa, just like we've said with some of these teams that we're concerned about getting deep when they have a bad defense. They have played 10 teams in the field. They beat Alabama, St. Mary's twice, Michigan State, Kentucky, Xavier, and Kent State. So even though they're not playing in a tough conference, they've got a good resume this year as far as teams that they've played and beat. I've got them winning a couple games, actually. I think Gonzaga can beat TCU, and then beat UCLA. I believe you went TCU against Gonzaga, though, right?
I did. Yeah, I have TCU over Gonzaga. I like TCU a lot with Miles. I know Lapkin's not there. Hurts them. Excuse me. My main thing with Gonzaga against TCU is elite in fast break offense, getting to the rim, pushing the pace. That's what Gonzaga is going to want to do. This is going to be a track meet. This game could easily see this game could be like 85-80.
Yep.
And if that's played like that, I absolutely love TCU. TCU is going to have their troubles when they play a team like a UCLA that's going to slow it down, control
half
the
court,
like
a half court game.
That's where TCU is absolutely going to struggle. I really feel that Asheville is going to be UCLA's toughest test of the first weekend, as crazy as it sounds, with the way they play. This Drew Bremer kid is legit, leads the nation in drawing fouls. Clark not being there, not having the athleticism to guard him in the wing, I really feel is going to hurt. I like Asheville to cover the number, UCLA to go through. I like Boise State over Northwestern. Just one of those matchups. So there's a couple of these matchups that we've kind of talked about. How Northwestern is built doesn't really hurt Boise State. How Boise State is built hurts Northwestern. Because of that, I like Boise State to get it through. I like UCLA over Boise State. This is going to be a big number. I like UCLA so much in this matchup, I'll probably be willing to lay a big number against the Boise State. And then we have UCLA against TCU. This is a coin flip game for me. I really want to take TCU here, but I just think that UCLA's half-court defense could be a little bit too much, and they could get it done there.
So in the West, I have UConn, Gonzaga, and I have UConn making it through into the Final Four. You have UConn, UCLA?
Yep, and then UConn making it through.
So Final Four for me, Alabama, Memphis, Houston, and UConn. On the left side of the bracket, I have Alabama and Memphis, and I have Alabama beating Memphis to make it to the final. On the opposite side, I have Houston versus UConn. I have UConn beating Houston. I have UConn winning the whole damn thing, and you can lock them in right now at about plus 2,100. If you were like Eric and you played them earlier in the year, you could get them at even 30-1 and higher. Eric, talk us through your Final Four.
I have Houston going up against UConn. I think UConn's a little bit too much for them. I think UConn's interior is going to be able to keep Houston off the offensive glass, limit their second chance points. And then I have Creighton over Memphis, and then I have UConn over Creighton in the final.
Eric, buddy, we took a big dive into the bracket. This is only Tuesday night. On Thursday, you and I are going to have a preview show at BTV Bets Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to go over all 16 games on the Thursday slate. We're going to do the same thing Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, 5:30 Pacific. And that'll be a little bit more based on the betting lines. We'll talk a little bit more about the individual games that day. This was more of a bracket breakdown for everyone. Then we'll do the same thing Saturday and Sunday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all of the games we will preview for you. We'll break them down. We'll tell you if we're going to bet them, which team you should bet, which number you should be looking for. If the number got too high, we'll talk about the brackets. It's inevitable. You know, there's going to be a few upsets. There always are. And man, I'm very, very excited right now. This is a fun time. I know you put in a lot of work. Go rest those pipes. It's not like you've had like 4 or 5 hours in a row of just recording. So throw in a throat lozenge or two over there, okay?
Will do. I'll have one of those lozenges.
There you go. So, Eric, let us know what you have coming up this week. You had Jim on the Tuesday podcast to talk some college basketball. I dished out a future. And then what do you have coming up rest of the week?
I'll have the stuff with you that comes out for BTV. Wednesday, we have an NBA show. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, NCAA. And then Sunday, we'll have an NBA show as well. My podcast comes out on Friday with NASCAR, basketball betting, and XFL. And then Kyle and I have a UFC show on Friday.
So yeah, everything this week.
All over the place this week.
Never stops. The grind keeps going for one of the hardest working men out there. Eric, make sure to give him a follow. And Eric, buddy, thanks again so much. Good luck in your bracket. Let's get UConn home. We've got UConn. We both have Memphis making a deep run. We both think Creighton's making a deep run. So heck, if we could get those 3 teams into the Elite 8, you and I will feel pretty good because I'm sure we'll have made a good amount of money along the way.
I mean, that would be phenomenal if that happened.
Let's get, Creighton home, Memphis, and UConn as a couple outside the box, maybe slightly off the radar teams that Eric and I think can make a deep run. So good luck to everyone putting your bracket together. And don't forget that we do have a free bracket if you want to get involved in. Totally free. It is on ESPN.com. It's the Tournament Challenge. And if you want to sign up, there is a group that I have created that the group name is That's What G Said. And the password for the group is 2023, 2023. Totally free to enter. Any of you out there can enter, but only one entry per. For the winner, you'll get $100 in cash, and you will pick a charity that we will donate $100 to. For the second place finisher, you'll get $50 in cash, and you'll pick a charity that we donate $50 to. That way, you win some money. We also donate some money to charity, and we can mention the charities that people pick. That way, it'll raise a little bit of awareness, and hopefully, they'll get a couple extra donations in there. So, Eric, make sure you get involved. Make sure everyone else get involved. Totally free to enter with a chance to win a little money and send some out to charity. So that is at ESPN.com, the Men's Tournament Challenge. The group, That's What G Said, and the group password 2023. Eric, buddy, good luck to you, and I'll be talking to you all week long. Good luck to everyone out there. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you're listening on the podcast, we still have plenty more to come. If you're watching on social media, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again real soon.